News Talk 610 AM and 102.1 FM. KVNU.
It's now 5:05. In for Bill Walter, I'm Will Feelwright with your Tuesday afternoon update. It's brought to you by Mount Logan Laundry. A 46-year-old Logan man has pleaded guilty to sharing child pornography on social media. Eric J. Bosworth was originally arrested in December of last year after law enforcement received a cyber tip. According to court records, Bosworth accepted a plea deal during a virtual hearing in First District Court last week. He pleaded guilty to 5 counts of sexual exploitation of a minor, a second-degree felony. Now, as part of the deal, prosecutors dropped 5 similar charges. Last year, Bosworth used a Facebook account to send a file containing child pornography to 81 other users. Investigators traced the Facebook and Gmail accounts to a phone number listed for Bosworth. Google also provided receipts emailed to Bosworth containing a shipping address for his residence. Police conducted a traffic stop as he was leaving his home in December. Officers transported Bosworth to the police department for questioning, where he admitted to viewing pornography regularly but denied having a sexual attraction to children. He also recalled sending the child pornography through Facebook Messenger because he was curious. Now, during last week's court hearing, Bosworth was ordered to undergo a pre-sentence report about his criminal history. Sentencing was scheduled for August 1st. Bosworth remains out of jail on $10,000 bail. He could be sentenced up to 15 years in prison. Well, a speed enforcement operation in Salt Lake City leads to almost 100 traffic tickets. That story on the way as we'll check that weather forecast, calling for really nice weather as we head into the afternoon here. As well, we'll see clear skies continuing. Some winds have been blowing out of the north and northwest. That's going to continue to keep skies clear as we head into tonight, as overnight temperatures will drop into the high 40s. Tomorrow we're going to be into the high 80s, then 90s coming for Thursday, settling back into the high 80s for Friday. And looking ahead to the weekend, expected to stay mostly sunny and clear. Well, a speed enforcement operation conducted by the Salt Lake City Police Department resulted in 96 citations and 22 warnings. Officers said their motor squad stopped 122 drivers focusing on roads leading in and out of the city. They said many stopped drivers were traveling 25 miles per hour above the speed limit, while several traffic stops also included drivers racing each other. In one case, officers stopped a driver for traveling 98 miles an hour in a 40-mile-an-hour zone. The driver told officers that she was late for a job interview. Many crashes investigated by the Salt Lake City Police Department have involved speeding, according to law enforcement. And you can expect prices at summer farmers markets to increase in line with inflation, just as they have at gas stations and grocery stores. Farmers who sell directly to customers at farmers markets in Utah said it's difficult not to raise prices on their customers as the cost of farming has risen dramatically. According to the Utah Farm Bureau, farmers have paid more for essentials such as seed and fertilizer, and transporting fresh fruits and vegetables to farmers markets will be more expensive due to rising gas prices. In for Bill Walter, I'm Will Feelwright with your KVNU News Update.
This is Mark with Roof Rescue. Most of us don't think about our roofs very often until you see shingles on the ground or water drips through your ceiling. Keep your roof in tip-top shape to protect your home, your biggest investment. Roof Rescue uses only the highest quality materials with experienced workmanship guaranteed to last. Even if you were denied by your insurance company the first time, a free re-evaluation can be made. Visit roofrescueusa.com to schedule your free consultation in Cache Valley and surrounding areas. Roof Rescue, providing watertight peace of mind.
Cache Valley's biggest party, the Cache Valley Cruise-In, is celebrating 40 years. 40 years of classic cars, concerts, and giveaway cars. This year, the Cruising Association is giving away 2 cars to one lucky winner. A 93 Chevy Corvette and a 68 Ford Mustang. Your entry ticket to the Cruise-In gives you a chance at winning both cars. June 30th through July 2nd, over 1,000 classic cars, motorcycles, hot rods, and custom builds from around the country. Enjoy delicious, all-American food and live music featuring Granger Smith, with special guest Earl Dibbles Jr. and opening act Sawyer Brown. Buy tickets today at Lee's Marketplace or online on the Cache Valley Cruise-In website. June 30th through July 2nd at the Cache County Fairgrounds.
We really do live in one of the world's most beautiful mountain areas, so why not rent a side-by-side at Beaver Creek Lodge and explore the miles of trails that are available? Franklin Basin, Egan Basin, Gibson Lake, St. Charles Canyon, and so much more. Take a sack lunch and spend the day enjoying the wildflowers and beautiful mountain scenery. Beaver Creek Lodge can accommodate 2 to 40. Side-by-side rentals are always new equipment and easy to operate as a car. Visit beavercreeklodge.com for information or call 753-1076 for reservations. You got to do it this summer.
The temperature's warmer, and here at Alpine Home Medical, we couldn't be happier to serve you as we mark our 25th anniversary this spring. Hi, I'm Jay Broadbent, and I want to thank you for being the best customers over the last 25 years. We couldn't have done it without you. If you've shopped with us before, thank you. If not, we want to make sure that we're your one-stop shop for all your home medical needs. You'll find the most selection and best quality products. Check out our power scooters for better freedom to help you move around and get you where you need to go easier. With compression socks, CPAP supplies, and incontinence products, our resupply team ships discreetly to your home, where you need it, when you need it. You get it all in unmarked boxes to protect your privacy. Alpine Home Medical has 10 locations across Utah and southern Idaho to serve you. Visit us online at alpinehomemedical.com. That's alpinehomemedical.com.
Hey Utah, ready for your summer adventure? A new GMC will get you wherever the road goes and beyond. Save now on every new rugged Murdoch GMC in stock during the Drive Into Summer Sales event. At Murdoch GMC Chevrolet Buick Cadillac of Logan, we've got the lineup to get you anywhere with confidence. Drive home a new 2022 Sierra 1500, Acadia, or Terrain with 0% for 3 years. When you walk through our doors, you feel like family. At Murdoch Chevrolet Buick GMC Cadillac in Logan or online at murdochchevroletlogan.com. We are professional grade.
Call 866-628-3065 or see dealer for complete details. Offer expires 7/5/22.
A recent poll finds that many Capitol Hill lobbyists are fed up with politicians accepting their money and then not coming through with promised legislation. Are politicians failing our lobbyists?
The voice of the corporate lobbyist has long been ignored by the politicians.
Nowadays, as soon as the politicians get in office, they forget whose money put them there.
That's right.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People, Hour 2 of today's show, Tuesday, June 21st. Appreciate everyone tuning in, taking an opportunity this week to invite candidates onto the show to talk to make their elevator pitch to listeners. And most candidates have agreed that they'll spend some time with us this week. So yesterday, again, we got to talk with Catherine Buse, Republican candidate for County Council Southeast. The week before that, Chris Booth joined us. We'll reach out to the other candidates in those races as well, Mark Hurd and Ladd Kennington. There is this 1st Congressional District race playing out, the United States Senate race playing out. We heard from candidate in that race, Republican Becky Edwards, who can be found at beckyforutah.com. She'll be a name on your ballot if you've not filled it out yet, and she made her elevator pitch yesterday on the show. You can find that on the podcast at the Podcastics service if you missed that. Also subscribe there and never miss a show again. That's my recommendation. We had a chance to speak recently with a name you'll see on your ballot in the 1st Congressional District race. Incumbent Republican Congressman Blake Moore and challengers Tina Cannon and Andrew Badger have all been guests on our show over the last several weeks and will join us again this week to make their elevator pitches. But we wanted to revisit some of our the interviews we'd done with candidates that got the biggest response from listeners, or that had listeners sending in questions saying, can you get some clarification on this, or wow, I really liked that, or ooh, I really hated that. Either way, if it got a big response from our listeners, I went through and made a note of that and put them all together into kind of a highlight reel. One of my favorite moments from the campaign so far really had nothing to do whatsoever with his specific re-election campaign, but it was a question sent in by a listener to Congressman Moore during some town hall time he was spending here on the show a couple of weeks ago, in which a listener said, look, sometimes, sometimes it seems like Congress just literally doesn't care, isn't doing their job, isn't listening, and it's discouraging. A listener emailed in and said that she had just finished reading an article about civic education in Utah, a poll that was done about Utah adults by BYU political science professors. And short version of this, it kind of revealed that people are a little cynical right now. They aren't convinced that their vote matters. They aren't convinced that Congress is getting things done on their behalf. And she wanted to know your take on that as you're out there doing the work. Does it just appear that way? Is this an impression that is driven through the media, or is there a bit of that?
No, I would say that as a taxpayer myself, I have many concerns about how much grandstanding and inability there is in this environment in solving our nation's biggest problems. And that's what it boils down to. And again, our debt and deficit, the deficits that we run each year, immigration, obviously inflation comes from a lot of issues, but it can come from economic policy that's been driven, our energy policy. Like, these all get marked down. And today, even in Second Amendment gun legislation, like, it's all so hyper partisan.
Sure.
And on the flip side, we'll do a bunch of votes in just a minute. Probably like 10 of them will go under suspension. Huge broad bipartisan support. These are 2/3. What you call when you vote under suspension is meaning, these are largely collaborative. They work together. These issues will be voted on, and they'll be in overwhelming fashion. They'll pass and be very bipartisan. I've led bills that have gotten to that point. Still, the majority of what goes on and gets done here is that I have two thoughts that'll kind of boil it down, and maybe it creates more discussion. But the big issues are the issues that garner more attention.
Sure.
And I'm worried that we've created an environment back here that we thrive on that. And we want that type of controversy. We want to bash the other side so much that we're unwilling to find that common ground on certain items. I mean, you saw even this year, infrastructure became that, right?
Sure.
And we've talked about that ad nauseum. It seems like it was a million years ago that took place, but it was something that and I'll be very candid. In the House, in the Senate, it was a different deal, but in the House, the majority, so Speaker Pelosi, they latched onto that as like, oh, okay, there's enough support to get this passed. We've got to leverage this piece of legislation, infrastructure, that could be largely popular, and we've got to tie it to another big, huge agenda that we know will be much more difficult. And so those kind of games that get played, you don't necessarily see that play out in our state legislature. And I think one of the key issues is in our state legislatures, and probably many across the state. I haven't done the research on this, but you're dealing with more single issue, single vote type of stuff. We get a lot of things packaged into the legislation back here in Washington, and it becomes very difficult. But those big ticket items are what the two parties are trying to, use against each other so they can remain or get into power. As I came into this, there was a part of me that was like, interesting. So think back to November 2020. We've got a very narrow margin of majority for Speaker Pelosi's in a Democrat-led House.
Sure. And
there's a very narrow majority for a Mitch McConnell-led Republican Senate. That was November 2020. And then when Republicans lost the two Georgia Senate seats, which they should never have lost, that was just, politics at its worst, actually.
Sure.
And all the drama that was ensuing during that point, during that runoff, when we lost that, all of a sudden you had a Democrat-controlled Senate and a House, even with the most narrow margins we've ever had in history. You would think that would naturally make it so there was more collaboration. You have narrow margins. There's very limited, things could vote. You could pass quite a bit of legislation, solve some big problems with narrow margins, but it turned into the opposite because you had the White House, House, and Senate all under one party control, and then it led to a huge, very strong progressive push. Democrats thought, okay, we've got this ability to get legislation through on what's called budget reconciliation, and we're going to go big. So they went big. They went on the first month, $2 trillion American Rescue Plan bill.
Sure.
And that triggered what inflation, what we're seeing today. Now, years and years and years of deficit spending from both parties over the last 20 years has added fuel to that, and our monetary policy has added fuel to that. But what triggered it is when you did that bill, it suppressed the workforce. We already had supply chain issues. We've got 11 million jobs unfilled right now, and we can't even get those back to being filled. We're now having major workforce issues, but you add that much monetary supply and that much stimulus money to an overheating economy anyway, a few months down the road, all of a sudden inflation, and we all could have predicted it every which way. That's why it's such strong opposition to that one, and it was so partisan. So in answer to the question, in summary, yes, big issues. They're not getting solved right now. Sure. I think in some cases, divided government helps solve some of those big issues. And, we can maybe talk more about that.
That was, again, Congressman Blake Moore talking very broadly about Congress and recent reports that through a survey done, via BYU right here in Utah, people are pretty dang cynical about Congress and its ability to actually solve problems that are popping up frequently in their lives. So that cynicism, Congressman Moore said, is somewhat warranted. And going back through a bit of history there with the congressman on his thoughts on how we got here today, from the inflation we're seeing to the basically low approval rating of Congress, both chambers, regardless of who has the majority. It was a fun conversation to have, a bit outside of what you normally talk to congressmen about, especially when running for re-election. So I appreciate Congressman Moore taking some time to answer those questions and indulging us a bit on that. But it was also very revealing, I think, for him as a candidate up for re-election this year, how he thinks about Congress, legislating, and more. If you want to hear that full interview, we spent a whole hour with Congressman Moore. That is available via the podcastic service on the KVNU's For the People podcast, and you can listen to it in its entirety. You can also read highlights from the interview at CashValleyDaily.com. I've linked to both on our Facebook page. Again, asking candidates to do their elevator pitches this week. Due to it being the final week, the congressional campaigns have very little time. They are scrambling, all of them. Same with the Senate campaigns for the most part, but most have been courteous and said they'll spend some time with us. So we'll check in with others in this race, the rest of the county council candidates, and more throughout the week here on the show. And we'll be back with more of For the People right after this.
Calling all golfers. Summer is here. Come experience Birch Creek and our summer golf leagues. Every Monday night is Couples League. Men's League is Monday after 1 and any time of the day, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. Ladies League is Wednesday or Thursday. And junior golf camps run Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Call Birch Creek today for information regarding our Summer Couples League, Men's and Ladies League, and junior golf camps. That's Birch Creek Golf Course in Smithfield.
Hey everybody, John Weiss again with Heritage Ram. We sure love our trucks in northern Utah, and right now you can get behind the wheel of one of the most awarded, longest-lasting pickup brands on the road during the Make the Switch event. Get 0% APR for 60 months, OAC on select new Ram trucks through Memorial Day. Seriously, you are not going to find a better deal. Heritage Ram in Brigham City, Tremont, and Logan, your hometown dealer with the biggest deals.
What makes essential workers essential?
We build safe roads for you to drive on.
We harvest fresh produce for your families to eat.
We help you heal when you're sick.
We get you where you need to go.
We keep where you work and live clean and safe.
We make sure you get what you need to make your household work.
You're the essential workers who help our nation run. You're in every city, town, and corner of our country, and you come from all over the globe. And you have essential protections under the law. I'm Marty Walsh. The Wage and Hour Division at the Department of Labor helps ensure you receive the essential protections you deserve. If you have questions about your pay or about your job protection during an illness, visit our website or call 866-4US-WAGE. That's 866-487-9243. We can provide help in more than 200 languages.
Brought to you by the United States Department of Labor.
Hi, this is Gordon Deal. Wednesday on This Morning, America's First News. A look at the Republicans who voted to impeach President Trump, who are now battling to keep their seats. Here, those facing tough primaries. Also, how much would a gas tax holiday really save us at the pump? Research and critics both point to minimal impacts. We'll explain. And protecting your savings in a downturn without rash decisions. Wednesday on This Morning, America's First News. From 4 to 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM. Your station for news and talk.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. Continuing on with highlights from our time with the 3 congressional candidates registered Republicans are going to see or have seen on their ballots. Again, this is going back to some of my favorite moments from the campaigns with just a week from today to go. Actually, ballots must be postmarked 1 week from tomorrow and no later, or yesterday and no later. But 1 week from today is Election Day. You can drop them off in person or at a drop box located at city office buildings and the county building all throughout the valley here. If you're listening along the Wasatch Front or in Box Elder, same thing there. Clerk's office or drop box on Election Day. Put them in the mail before then. You're just fine, even if it's Monday at 4:30, but probably not past 5 on Monday. So you want those postmarked to mail them in if you want your vote to count. Dropped at a drop box or in person at the clerk's office on Election Day if you forget or choose to do that. Regardless, it's coming down to the wire. We'll see how these races take shape. We'll see how the United States Senate race takes shape. We'll see how the county council races take shape. And then, of course, the 1st Congressional District race. Before the break there, we started the hour with one of my favorite conversations we've had in this cycle with Congressman Blake Moore. He's the incumbent in this primary and, of course, running for re-election. And we had a chance to talk to him about something that's a bit more philosophical. This low approval rating that Congress has had for 2 decades now, regardless of which party is in charge. And a recent survey done by BYU saying that people are very cynical. They don't believe Congress is in touch, that they're not really solving the problems, whether it's climate change or dealing with school shootings or whether it's the economy or the national debt. They don't feel like, regardless of which party is in the majority, Congress can actually do anything about any of this. And they're giving up, and we're starting to see that play out in voter turnout in parts of the country. While here in Utah, we're seeing voter turnout continue to rise, thankfully. Other parts of the country, they're seeing it, plateau or even dip back down in the last several cycles. So it's a problem, and it's one that is cross-party. There are Democrats I know that feel this way, just as many as there are Republicans I know that feel this way. Congressman Moore speaking a bit about that, saying, it's real. The cynicism is a bit justified. But he says what he's learned in his first 2 years in office there as a representative of Utah in the United States Congress is that there is a lot more that just never gets out news-wise. Deals coordination that happens on bills that aren't going to get a lot of headlines or get anyone some more money to their donations or more money donated to their campaign coffers. He said members of Congress don't go out and talk to Meet the Press or CNN about that. They just want to do the hot button, the fighty kind of stuff that's going to get you a lot of headlines. And he said, unfortunately, then it creates the impression that Congress isn't actually dealing with anything important. But he said in his experience, it is happening more behind the scenes, not really behind the scenes, but outside of the spotlight at least, where you have, he said, these long stretches of voting where everyone's getting along and there are robust debates and problems are actually solved. But no one really thinks that's important, so they don't go talk about it when they get a chance in the media. That's unfortunate. Pleasure to have all of these candidates join us here on the show. Another highlight from the campaigns was a conversation we got to have with one of Congressman Moore's opponents in this race, Republican candidate Tina Cannon, a name that you saw or will see when you fill it out finally on your ballot. Tina Cannon running, of course, to unseat Congressman Moore and represent Utah in our federal delegation, the United States Congress, was here in the studio a couple of weeks ago. We had a chance to ask her about the uniqueness of District 1. This is a very, compared to the other 3 districts in Utah, there are some very unique challenges to District 1 and its makeup. Here's what how that conversation with Republican candidate Tina Cannon went. I mean, you've got Rich County, you know, where their primary concerns right now are, am I going to be able to make a living off of agriculture 10 years from
under.
now? Yeah.
They're going not in 10 years. Concern. They're literally going under now. The price I've spent 3 events up in Rich County, and I've heard it every single time. I'm losing my livelihood. These are farmers, literally farmers and ranchers who cannot afford to keep going. They're both husband and wife are working other jobs to put the money back into the farm and the ranch, and they're not sure they're going to make it.
No.
And then you've got an energy policy that's telling them they need electric vehicles. Are you kidding me? Where do you plug in Ridge?
We talked about this earlier this week. I asked listeners how they felt about this. I'm actually a fan of electric vehicles, but I would drive one from here to Salt Lake. Mm-hmm. I would never drive one over there.
Yeah. Well, have you seen one that's an effective tractor yet? Because there isn't one.
And it's just too far from the charging stations.
Yeah.
And the reality is, much of the 1st Congressional District is in that type of a,
Well, I talked to someone in Salt Lake, and a voter in Salt Lake who is very passionate about this and how we needed to all go to electric vehicles. And then he told me that when he goes on vacation, on a road trip, he just rents another vehicle, a gas vehicle.
Sure.
He's just doing it in Salt Lake, where everything's within 30 miles and 30 minutes,
where
and
it's
he can
easy
come.
to do.
Yeah, and he can come back home and plug in. That doesn't work for much of this district. That
Sure.
It has a longer commute than that. If you're in the Salt Lake Valley or in some places along the Wasatch Front, that may work, but that's not going to work in rural Utah.
Sure. And this kind of brings us to something else I want to talk to you about, because I know you pay really close attention to state politics as well as a resident and as a former county commissioner. You've done a lot of things with the cities and counties.
I've been involved a long time. I tell people it's my involvement in tax. My specialty in tax has been my gateway drug to politics.
I think
because I have to sit across my desk and tell people how much money they send the federal and state government, and sometimes it's like, I don't know who wrote these rules. I really don't. Well, actually, I do know who wrote these rules, and that explains a lot. I do pay attention. It's an occupational hazard.
That was, again, our conversation with Tina Cannon, Republican candidate for Congress in this upcoming primary. Well, ongoing, I guess we should say, primary. One of the 3 of these people, Andrew Badger, Tina Cannon, or current Congressman Blake Moore, will represent Utah in the United States Congress. No offense to Democrats, we know how the general election will play out. So this will be decided by votes cast on June 28th or mailed in before. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. We do love our incumbents here in Utah, so I don't think we should expect any surprises or upsets, but it's really been a pleasure getting to know all the candidates. So some highlights here this hour from our time with the 3 candidates for Congress here in the 1st Congressional District. Incumbent Blake Moore, Tina Cannon, who you just heard from there, and, of course, coming up, Andrew Badger. I've linked to all their Facebook and website pages on our own Facebook page, by the way, if you want to find them there. It's been, a primary with 3 very energetic, very sincere candidates, and 3 individuals coming from 3 very different points of view. And this is why I love primaries. This is the choice that I'm always talking about. This is exactly what primaries are supposed to do. Make people think, make people weigh some issues in their head, make people wonder about the future, think about where we are right now, and then pick a person, preferably from a group of people as a choice, and cast your ballot. So this is a perfect example of that. Even if everything just settles. The dust settles after the primary, and it goes back to right where it was. It got people engaged in the process, so I love this. So thanks again to all the candidates for spending so much time from us. You've heard from Blake Moore, and there just now Tina Cannon on the other side, the third candidate in this race, Andrew Badger. Some highlights from our time with him over the last few weeks. Right after these headlines with KVNU's Will Philwright.
Well, thank you, Jason. The news this hour is brought to you by Beaver Creek Lodge. As summer has officially begun, many families are heading into the mountains to enjoy fishing, hiking, picnicking, and camping in the Uinta-Wasatch Cache National Forest. Summertime also means that bears are on the move. There have been recent sightings of black bears in and around Tony Grove Lake and also Franklin Basin. For the safety of the public and bears, the Forest Service is encouraging campers and visitors to practice bear-aware safety while visiting the mountains. There are some simple things that can be done to avoid an encounter with a black bear, such as if you do encounter a bear, do not run. Instead, make loud noises or hit two rocks together repeatedly, and if it does not run off, walk slowly backwards facing the bear, but avoid eye contact and never turn your back on a bear. Now also keep in mind the bears tend to be more active at dawn and dusk, so plan your hikes accordingly and stay on marked trails and obey the regulations of the area that you're camping or hiking in. The Forest Service said that by taking these precautions along with others, people can have a safe and enjoyable experience in the backcountry. A state lawmaker, meanwhile, is threatening a bill that would ban campaign signs from places like freeway overpasses and highway on- and off-ramps. Senator Mike McKell, a Republican from Spanish Fork, said that he opened a bill file after driving through Utah County and seeing large campaign signs in medians. He said they create vehicle safety hazards. Senator McKell said that he would like to prohibit campaign signs from government properties, which would include highways, roads, and overpasses. Depending on where a political campaign sign is posted now, it may already be illegal if it impedes traffic. Now, the First Amendment protects political campaign signs, but there are carve-outs to allow for public safety and littering. Senator McKell said that his bill would not make it a criminal offense, but instead the state would charge a fee to political campaigns to have Utah Department of Transportation employees remove any offending signs. The bill would be introduced during next year's legislative session. Well, looking at that weather forecast, it's been a warm one today, and tomorrow expect even warmer weather as temperatures expected to drop into the high 40s tonight. Tomorrow we're going to hit the high 80s and then 90s coming for Thursday, as we're going to see these sunny skies continuing through Friday afternoon, when we could see a few clouds and a small chance of some rain. Otherwise, though, remaining sunny as we head into the weekend. In for Bill Walter, I'm Will Philwright with your KVNU News Update.
My guy is so amazing. He sits on the couch and plays video games. And sometimes he smashes 4 slices of bread into a big ball and stuffs it into his mouth. Other guys mow their lawn or power wash the patio. Not Dan. He likes to cuddle in front of the TV and watch pro wrestling.
Men, rest assured you'll never meet a woman like this. But kudos to you. You called Hull Tree Care to help shape your shrubs and trim your overgrown trees. Call 760-6587 and ask for their radio discount. 760-6587.
Inflation at record highs, American-made energy under attack, and our enemies growing stronger. President Biden's weak leadership is allowing Nancy Pelosi and the radical left to jeopardize America's security and put our future at risk. That's why conservative Blake Moore is fighting back against President Biden, Pelosi, and the radical left to create a better future for our nation. In Congress, Blake Moore is working to lower inflation for Utah families by reducing debt, creating jobs, and growing the economy. To better secure and protect American-made energy, Blake Moore is working to increase domestic production, helping America return to energy independence. And as a former Foreign Service officer, Blake Moore knows that by strengthening American military might, we can better protect Americans. It's time to fight back against the radical left for a better American future. Support conservative Blake Moore for Congress.
I'm Blake Moore, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Moore for Congress.
The temperature's warmer, and here at Alpine Home Medical, we couldn't be happier to serve you as we mark our 25th anniversary this spring. Hi, I'm Jay Broadbent, and I want to thank you for being the best customers over the last 25 years. We couldn't have done it without you. If you've shopped with us before, thank you. If not, we want to make sure that we're your one-stop shop for all your home medical needs. You'll find the most selection and best quality products. Check out our power scooters for better freedom to help you move around and get you where you need to go easier. With compression socks, CPAP supplies, and incontinence products, our resupply team ships discreetly to your home, where you need it, when you need it. You get it all in unmarked boxes to protect your privacy. Alpine Home Medical has 10 locations across Utah and southern Idaho to serve you. Visit us online at alpinehomemedical.com. That's alpinehomemedical.com.
Wow, your cars look so shiny.
Thanks. I've been taking them to Green Gorilla Car Wash. Thanks to their new ceramic application, my cars have never had such a glossy shine.
Sounds expensive.
You haven't heard about their sale? Right now, their Jungle membership with ceramic coating is half off for every vehicle. Instead of $30 per month, I'm only paying $14.99 from now until September.
That's such a great price.
I know, and my half-price membership is good at both Green Gorilla locations in the Valley.
I better head to Green Gorilla now.
Hi, this is Drew Allen with Allen Mortuaries. Over the years, thousands of families have planned ahead with Allen Mortuaries. Planning ahead helps you make informed and thoughtful decisions. It also spares your family the stress of making these decisions under the pressure of time and strong emotions. Allen Mortuaries' secure pre-need trust plan can save you nearly 40% versus other plans. Keep it simple, safe, and secure. Go with the proven choice, Allen Mortuaries. Voted best funeral home in Cache Valley in northern Utah. Allen Mortuaries. Then, now, always.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. At 4 in the morning, my phone rang. They said, "I regret to inform you that your husband was wounded in action." Victor sustained a moderate traumatic brain injury. I was doing school full-time, and I was also then caring for Victor. One of the most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. Running through my favorite moments from the campaigns here, focusing this hour on the congressional candidates in this 1st Congressional District Republican primary playing out. Again, June 28th is Election Day. Ballots must be postmarked by Monday, June 27th, or turned in person on June 28th. You can register to vote up until Election Day in person with proper ID at the clerk's office. But otherwise, the ballots that are out there are the ballots, for the most part, that will be coming back in. Talk to the clerk's office. Many ballots have already come in with a week to go, and that's a good sign. Hopefully we'll see voter turnout high. That would be my preference in any election, but primaries have a tendency to do that, and even though this is registered Republicans only, hopefully we see at least 30% of registered Republicans here in northern Utah voting in these races. You've got a lot. You've got the county council primaries. You've got the state house primary between Mike Peterson and former Rep. Val Potter. You've got the United States Senate race. We spoke with Becky Edwards yesterday. We'll speak with the other candidates coming up this week and ask them to give us the same elevator pitch that Edwards gave us. You've got this race, the 1st Congressional District race, which is an important one considering what is going to be on the agenda coming up in the next congressional session, which, when they kick off 2023, I think it's going to be very interesting time. So your vote for Congress, either in the general election coming up or in this Republican primary, is really important. So if you got a ballot, hopefully you take the time to fill it out and send it back. So far this hour, we started things off. You heard Congressman Blake Moore, one of my favorite interviews or topics we had a chance to discuss with him in this primary cycle was more of a general question about Congress. Again, a cynicism that is revealed in a recent BYU survey about Congress is not just here in Utah. This survey was done nationwide by BYU Political Science. But this feeling that Congress just can't get anything productive done. Big issues like school shootings or climate change or the economy, or for those on the right, the deficit or foreign policy strategy. I mean, regardless of what it is, Congress just can't seem to solve a problem. And yet they've got plenty of time to be all over CNN and Fox and using all the right talking points and raising money for the reelection. That cynicism was very apparent in this BYU survey. So we had a chance to talk with Congressman Moore about that. Then, before the news, you heard from a challenger to Congressman Moore, the incumbent in this race, Republican Tina Cannon, and she talked a little bit about the uniqueness of the district. One of my favorite conversations we had with her through this cycle. The district is both heavy in the agricultural side of things, but it's also, due to redistricting now, got some really urban areas too. People, as we discussed, people who are more concerned about the future of their electric car and number of charging stations in parts of the district. And over here you've got people that are wondering if they're going to be able to sell their crops and stay afloat. And so very, very different concerns. So we spoke with Tina Cannon about that. Now, the final name that you have seen or will see on your ballot when you finally open it, Republican candidate Andrew Badger. One of my favorite conversations with him actually was in regards to something that only he's talking about. And I get that for a lot of people this might not be the most pressing issue right now, but it's a really important issue, especially for me, a transparency advocate, but also for some of the things we've seen play out in the news over the last decade, 2 decades plus. In this race, Andrew Badger has priorities very similar. I mean, it's a Republican primary. You're going to see a lot of similarities between all three candidates, right? And you do. So I tried to focus on one issue that was very different from their opponents that they were talking about with each of them. And this is it for Andrew Badger. He's the only candidate in this race between incumbent Blake Moore, Republican Tina Cannon, and Republican Andrew Badger. Badger's the only one talking about what he feels is an increased need for congressional oversight.
Yeah. No, I think it's extremely important. Look, I mean, we have separate branches of power. I mean, we have these checks and balances for a reason. Our founders, what they were most worried about was concentrated power. And they learned this from ancient Rome, from ancient Greece, and that was the real danger. So we divided the power and we had oversight over each branch. Problem is, these lines are being blurred. And I don't think Congress is really doing its job, especially with the Biden administration and some of their reckless policies, whether it's the collapse of Afghanistan, the broken border, these trade policies, et cetera. And I think it's up to Congress to hold them accountable. I think the reason why the Biden administration is becoming more and more extreme is because they don't have to suffer any consequences for it. And it really, if it wasn't, for example, if there wasn't for that pushback from some in Congress, at least, about this disinformation governance board, a ministry of truth in America, they wouldn't have scrapped it. So that's why it shows it's so important to have this congressional oversight. Some of the top priorities for me would be around Afghanistan, our foreign policy, as well as the broken border, the economy. I think we need oversight and reform of the FBI, which has become politicized, among a number of issues, as well as, big tech and, censorship, that type of thing. So those are, I think, the starting point. I think it's Congress's role to do it.
Things like oversight and the FBI and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, no. So I think it's really important that you actually kind of understand how Washington works a bit. It is a swamp, and you have to know how things operate there if you really want to go in there and break it up and change things. So my job, I was a case officer with the Defense Intelligence Agency. So my job was to collect human intelligence to support the military warfighters. I was a civilian, but my job was basically to recruit informants and flip them, run them as sources, and get that information for our military. So I volunteered, deployed to Afghanistan in 2014. I was on the ground there working with working with the military. I was actually working with the FBI. We were tracking down a kind of a cold case for one of our ambassadors in the 80s was actually assassinated in Afghanistan. So I was trying to track down a source who had potential information about who was responsible for that, because we still don't know who it was. So I've worked with these guys extensively, and I know how they operate, and they need reform. You know, what we saw with the FBI basically being used, they're using counterterrorism resources to try to intimidate these parents at school board meetings. You know, Merrick Garland, we had this letter from the National School Board Association, and I think we need reform, like we did in the 70s with the Church Committee. We need to reform the FBI, and I think, like you mentioned, having had experience seeing these guys firsthand, I bring unique insights to that.
And the question is, do you agree that Congress needs to be held more strictly to war powers votes? And I assume what they mean by this question is we don't really declare war anymore. We just kind of do it, right?
We just kind of slide into it. Yeah, so this is actually one of my top issues. And unfortunately, because we have so many domestic issues, we're not focusing on the foreign policy ones. But boy, you know, if you look at history, if you get the foreign policy ones wrong, you know, it's big trouble. And so basically, to summarize, Congress, in their Constitution, declare war is the power enumerated to the Congress. Since then, that's obviously eroded. With what happened in Vietnam, Congress passed the War Powers Resolution, which said, you know, the president can use military action up to 60 days, but then he has to come back to Congress to get authorization to continue doing that. So there's been basically this battle between Congress and the president about the use of military force. I don't know about you, Jason, but I don't want Joe Biden unilaterally deciding whether we go to war or not. And we're seeing this play out in large part in Ukraine, you know, where we haven't necessarily declared war, but we're escalating the situation quite rapidly, where we went from, okay, we'll provide some limited means to now we're providing, you know, multi-launch rocket systems, which can reach into Russia. We had Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin even come out and say our strategic goal now is to weaken Russia. And, you know, basically we're having the Ukrainians pull the trigger on our behalf. You know, that's far different when we entered this conflict 2 or 3 months ago. We call this mission creep. And one of the biggest lessons I've learned, you know, we learned from Iraq and Afghanistan, where I served, is exit strategy. You know, how do we define victory? You know, what's our exit strategy when we get involved with our military? Because oftentimes we found when we use our military abroad, it often creates more problems than it solves for. And especially in Ukraine, where there's so many complex diplomatic and political situations, I think we're in a very dangerous situation. I think Congress, this is a perfect example. It needs to provide more oversight. We just sent them $40 billion more dollars to Ukraine.
Yeah.
And my problem is I don't think we have a definition of victory. And the Biden administration doesn't have a definition of victory, by the way. They basically said, well, we'll kind of let the Ukrainians decide that. And that's just irresponsible. I mean, this is American taxpayer money. We could potentially get into a major conflict with Russia, and we need to have Congress start doing its job.
That was, again, Andrew Badger, Republican candidate in this 1st Congressional District primary, playing out. Election day is 1 week from today. Ballots must be postmarked if you're going to mail them back in 1 week from yesterday, Monday, this coming Monday at 5 o'clock. It's the deadline for that. If you haven't postmarked your ballot, do not mail it. Drop it in a drop box at a city office building throughout the valley or along the Wasatch Front if you're listening over there, or take it to the clerk's office in person. You can register to vote up until Election Day in person with proper ID, but that is in person only. The deadline for making changes or registering at vote.utah.gov has come and gone. So in-person options only, and again, your ballot must be postmarked by June 27th or dropped off in person at the clerk's office or a drop box on Election Day, June 28th. That's everything you need to know for this. It's fun for me, obviously, to be sitting here and be a part of these interviews. But this hour, you just heard my 3 favorite parts of our interviews, respective interviews with the candidates. Andrew Badger, who you just heard, Tina Cannon before him, and starting the hour, incumbent Republican Congressman Blake Moore. 3 of my favorite conversations with these candidates there. If you're just tuning in, of course, you'll be able to grab the podcast of this hour tomorrow, but you can also listen to the full interviews I grabbed these highlights from via our podcast channel at the Podcastic Service, and also read highlights written up at cachevalleydaily.com from each and every one of these interviews. So there you have it, the 3 Republicans vying for your vote in this Republican primary for the 1st Congressional District representation. have taken this time with us. A pleasure to bring you some highlights, my favorite parts from our interviews. But please, if you're undecided, take a second to listen to the full hour with each candidate, available via our podcast feed, the Podcastic service. And we'll be back right after this.
News Talk 610 AM, 102.1 FM, KVNU.
My name is Dr. Brandon Prevey, and I love being a dentist. I work with Drs. Curtis Taylor, Anthony Larson, and Paul Harris. When people ask where our office is, I actually have two answers. First, I spend part of the week at Logan Dental Associates, and then second, I spend the other part at Cherry Creek Dental in Richmond. Both locations are a full-service dental office and can take care of everyone in the family. Call or go online and make your appointment with the offices most convenient for you. Logan Dental Associates in Logan or Cherry Creek Dental in Richmond.
The Cache Valley Cruise-In is almost here. Come join the fun as they celebrate 40 years. This year, they're giving away 2 cars to one lucky winner. A 93 Chevy Corvette and a 68 Ford Mustang. So come check out the show, because your ticket gives you a chance at winning both cars. In addition to classic cars and custom builds, don't miss the Top Rod of Utah, where you can browse cars worth big money. There's a poker run, sock hop, and swap meet. Enjoy great food and vendors selling all kinds of unique products. And if you don't have concert tickets, you better get them fast. This year, headline entertainment is Granger Smith, with special guest Earl Dibbles Jr. and opening act Sawyer Brown. The Cache Valley Cruise-In is Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, June 30th through July 2nd at the Cache County Fairgrounds.
Reach the Sheriff's Department Civil Processing Division. Please hold where call is transferred to Sergeant David Chapman. Deputy McCoy.
This is Sheriff Chad Jensen. Fraudulent phone calls similar to this one have been received by many citizens in Cache County. The most common scams are asking for payment over the phone because of a lawsuit, civil bench warrant, or to post bail for a family member who has supposedly been arrested. They ask for payment in form of prepaid cards, gift cards, or money transfers, and if you do not pay, they threaten to arrest you. The Sheriff's Office does not take payment or ask for personal information over the phone. These types of scams often use internet phone numbers, which are nearly impossible to track. If you receive a phone call of this nature, do not give out any personal information and hang up. Be cautious about the information you give out over the phone to make sure you are not the next victim of a scam.
Coming up on the Wednesday edition of the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show, the latest with the White House's efforts to put out the many fires all over the country when it comes to the border, when it comes to the economy, the price of gas. Can they make sense of any of this? Plus, Clay, what do you got?
January 6th, the committee hearings that will not end. What is the significance? We'll break it all down for you. It'll be the Wednesday edition of Clay and Buck.
10 to 1 on News Talk KVNU, 102 FM and 610 AM.
Hey, can't it be the Looney Tune?
Wrapping up today's show with not a candidate. We'll be getting back to the candidates, though, by the way. Tomorrow on the show, more elevator pitches from county council candidates, congressional candidates, and United States Senate candidates. We'll also check in one more time with Utah House candidates, incumbent Mike Peterson and challenger former state rep Val Potter. Ask them to make an elevator pitch as well. It's fun to hear candidates compressing themselves and their campaigns into 30 seconds to a minute with their best pitch. So I'm glad they all want to play along. So stay tuned for that. We'll also be talking tomorrow about a study coming out of Utah State University. Speaking of Utah State University, a quick tangent here while I've got the time. There was a photo that I ran across. This is just cool. It doesn't mean anything. It's just it was a cool experience for me. A photo I ran across at a NASA through a NASA social media channel. This was a photo talking about students and interns and some new stuff that's going to be happening with satellites and NASA. And because he has a very unique hairstyle, but because he'd also been a guest here in the studio years past, I spotted an engineering student from Utah State University. Mr. Okafor, if you're out there, it was you. Very recognizable hairstyle. I'd met him here in the studio, and that was just cool to see this on a NASA social media. USU is churning out some noteworthy people, let's just say that, through their graduates. Anyway, tomorrow on the show, research done at Utah State University being published just this week showing that your best friend when it comes to your health, your mental health, your outlook on the world, your ability to get things done could be a 30-minute walk for a lot more reasons than most people think. Dave Ramsey next here on KVNU Logan.
Breaking news and stimulating talk.
America is ours.
KVNU Logan, 610 AM and 102.1 FM.